Joining me today is a high school friend of mine. He's done some amazing work, has a great life story to tell, and please welcome the Prince himself, Nate.
Glad to be here, man. Thank you.
All right, man. Well, I wanted to talk to you because on one of my podcasts, or I think it may have been one of my posts, I talked about you and Dan Hogan, who both of you were a part of our graduating class.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing. We just talked about this before we came on, about how amazing it is that three of us out of our whole class, I think it's noticeable. I don't think anybody else has really spoken their mind as far as stuff like we do. But Dan is talking about health and fitness. You're kind of doing the same thing, but along with more motivational, positive thoughts. And then, of course, my stuff with motivating, positive stuff going on. And I just think that's awesome. I think there needs to be more of that. What got you to this point? What's your story of your life that got you to this?
Yeah. Well, see, that's a really long story, so we'll hit the highlights. I think that what got me to start doing this is, first of all, I saw a lot of illness inside of my family. I watched my grandma die of cancer when I was real young. And so that kind of instilled inside of my mind, that what it's like for somebody who's suffering immensely. At a young age, you just want to help. And so that kind of instilled like this healer type mentality where I just want to help people feel better. And I saw my grandfather, when I was in my early 20s, my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer. And when that happened, I decided that, I wasn't going to let him pass too because of that. There had to be an answer. There had to be a way for the human body to heal. And so I spent hours and hours and hours researching alternative methods to healing because the traditional Western medicine didn't help the first time. And I knew that there had to be another way. Anyway, make a long story short, within 3 months of him starting the protocol that I found, and he was willing to try, he turned down chemotherapy, he turned down radiation, and we jumped full feet into an alternative therapy. Within 3 months, he was completely cancer-free, and he was at stage 3. So it was a pretty tremendous turnaround. So, seeing that our bodies have the ability to heal themselves when they're given what they need, made me completely question Western medicine.
Yeah.
And why Western medicine is so focused on covering up the symptoms and not addressing the root cause and not looking at the things that really matter. Why is it that doctors through their entire PhD only have, I can't remember the exact number, so I could be wrong here, but it's the equivalent, from what I understand, of about 10 hours of nutrition. Why is that? That seems ridiculous. So, with a complete failure in what I look at as, Western medicine, if you get into a car accident, for sure you want to go. But,
Yep.
And thank goodness that we have those facilities and those wonderful people who work there to do that kind of work and help save our mangled bodies. But at the same time, when it comes to creating wellness, I feel like the medical system itself drops the ball. And so that's really kind of what inspired me to start taking these steps.
Did anything growing up as far as school or how you were raised kind of lead you towards this, or
my parents were or my mom was really into alternative healing. Mm-hmm. And she was always trying different, trying to find healthy ways to feed us and different supplements. And so that kind of sparked a little bit of it. I think that that helped. But you know, in high school, you know, I was completely oblivious to healthy eating and taking care of the body. I mean, you know, like during high school and right after high school, I mean, I was really at kind of a low end. I mean, I was drinking a lot, and after graduating, I was, you know, drinking and partying practically every night. And just after that, I was at the unhealthiest I've ever been. I weighed 245 pounds.
Yeah.
And you know, when I remember the day I was standing in the bathroom, I just got myself all cleaned up, and I was bending over to pick up some laundry that was on the floor, and I heard this really loud tearing sound. And I stood up. I had torn a giant hole in my boxers, and when I looked in the mirror, it just hit me. Like, I'm a pretty small framed guy, and so 250 pounds for a dude that was 5'10" and small framed, that was pretty heavy. It just hit me like nobody's coming to save me. If I don't do something now, nothing's going to change. And that day, I put on a pair of tennis shoes and I went outside and I ran as far as I could. And I made it to the first telephone pole. And I just did that every single day. And like with my focus on creating health inside of my body, it's just like one thing led to another. Like I was just focused on just making it as far as I could every day, a little bit farther, a little bit farther. And that started the journey, just trying to get as far as I could every single day.
Do you think, I know I have to apologize to the viewers. There's one other person that I've talked to that has an inspiring story from our class, and that's Tyler Hensley, with his addiction with alcohol and overcoming that and going across the country on his bike. I forgot I talked to him. There's four of us. But anyways,
Yeah.
I mean, alcohol is very, very tough. And I think there's a good number of us in our high school that had that problem.
Well, it was kind of like a rite of passage, wasn't it? I mean, like you think about it, like, you know, where we went to school, if you were part of, which it was very large majority was part of kind of like the hick culture. And so like the rite of passage was drinking. How much could you put away and how good were you at like beer pong? And then the second one was chewing tobacco and cigarettes. I mean, so
football games, man. I remember passing it down.
Yep.
Everybody had some. But yeah,
Yep.
it was tough. And I think a lot of it was not only peer pressure, but I think it was the being accepted and wanting to fit in with everybody. Like for me, like I said prior to us getting on here, I just wanted to fit in. I was hanging out with the jocks. I was hanging out with the preppies, the skateboarders, the gothics, the band, the drama people. I mean, I was all over that place before school started every morning. And thankfully I have a lot of good friends because of it. But, you know, I think a lot of it with me is, you know, part of me, I hung out with some good crowd and then part of me didn't. So, you know, thankfully, I think a lot of that experience either taught us a good lesson and we became better from it, or we're stuck in that spot, which we're seeing from, unfortunately, quite a few of our classmates. But, you know, moving off from that and getting back to our conversation here, I saw one of your videos that really hit, and it was about talking about your family passings and the struggles. For your life struggle that you've dealt with and overcame, if there's someone watching this right now that's going through that same problem, maybe it's with an addiction to heroin, meth, or alcohol, whatever, and they just don't know how to handle it, and they're looking for that healing from maybe a sexual abuse or physical abuse, or watching their parents go through fights or whatever, what can you give as that advice to those people to kind of help them pull through and find a way out?
Oh man. Yeah, that hits me deep. You know, my uncle was somebody who's extremely important to me, and he was my mentor, my friend, and you know, I watched him suffer tremendously, you know, with alcohol, and where that took him, and ultimately the amount of pain that was caused in his family around him. And, you know, if I were to talk to somebody about that today, who was, you know, if I would rather have a conversation with them, because, you know, it's really about their journey. It's not really about what I have to say. I guess first of all is I would want that person to love themselves. I mean, I think that that's one of the biggest things that, you know, people struggle with is, you know, all of us doubt ourselves to a certain degree and, you know, doubt our abilities. And a lot of us have done things that we may regret, or done things that, you know, maybe we feel shame about or guilt about. And, you know, really when it comes down to it, is all we have is today, and we can focus on now. And that stuff that happened in the past, we can let go of, because if we keep carrying it into our future, it's not going to do us any good, and it's not going to help anybody else. And we all have the choice to live now, like in this present moment. And I think that it's important, you know, in the journey of healing, is to first recognize that bad stuff happens to all of us, and just to accept that, you know, we did our best with what we had during that time. So, I mean, that would be a good place to start. And, you know, and like I said, with my weight loss journey, I think it's the same when it comes to anything. You know, I chewed tobacco for 10 years, so I have a little bit of an understanding about addiction. Is, you know, and I quit. It's been, I don't know, 8 years now since my last time. You know, it's taking that first step. It's knowing who we want to be ultimately. And, you know, like when I quit chewing tobacco, just as a story, when I quit chewing tobacco, I wasn't thinking about, I was trying not to think about the tobacco itself. I was trying to think about who I wanted to become. And when I looked at people who were really successful or doing really big things, they weren't letting a substance control their lives. They were somebody who was able to, you know, be in charge of who they were. And I was like, man, I really want to be that. I really, you know, I want to be successful. I want to be somebody who makes an impact. And if I can't even control my own cravings, I'm not going to be that person. And so that was kind of like a motivator. Did it get me through it? No. But and to help me see who that was that I wanted to become. And I had like a target that I was aiming towards, and that helped. But, you know, I think when it comes to addiction, it's not really about, it's not about the addiction. It's about whatever this addiction is, what does it do for a person? You know, like, so if that person was sitting in front of me, I would say, what is it doing for you? What is it giving you? And, you know, I think if we ask ourselves that enough times and we really boil down to the core of it, it's always going to be something good. Does it give you peace? Does it give you security? Does it give you comfort? Does it, you know, help you get away from everything that's going on around you? You know, those aren't bad things. Those are good things. Those are things that, you know, we genuinely want to move towards. And if we can recognize that that's what we're shooting for, then we can find other ways to meet that. We can find other ways to fill that gap. And you know, that's the biggest thing, is meeting that unanswered need that whatever that addiction is giving you currently. Yeah.
I think the biggest problem I had is, I've talked about this on my podcast about, I think it was 1990 or 1991 when my dad's mom passed away. I held it heavy on me because I was not in a good place at the time. I was in a place in Butte, Montana at the time called Rivendell. It's not there anymore, but it was a lockdown treatment facility for people that, you know, needed. It was back in that day when, you know, ADHD and medications were flying out the window with new products. And, you know, I call myself a test dummy for all that. And I went there for attitude problems and whatnot. And I thought she died because she was embarrassed of me. And this is just a young, you know, 5-6-year-old mind working. But for a long time, I was scared of death. I was scared of funerals, caskets, all that stuff. You know, couldn't go to any funeral without avoiding where the open casket, if there was one. Um, it took me until a few years ago when my mom's dad died, where I went and actually touched him in his casket. And that was a big step for me. But fear, I think, is the biggest struggle that any human being deals with. The fear of, am I good enough? The fear of, is what happened to them, my family, is that going to happen to me? Am I going to get cancer? Am I going to get liver disease? Am I going to have all this stuff? And for some of us who have high anxiety like I do, that stuff just hits you and it just eats at you and it keeps going and going and going until you can't take no more. And, I think the biggest thing that comes with that is the thought of hurting yourself, the thought of suicide. And for both of us, I think you and I both knew a good friend of ours. If I'm correct, even your wife worked with her. If you know who I'm talking about by now, Daisy. She worked at that restaurant in the mall for a while there, where they had the turning roast beef thing. I can't remember the place, but
Anna's.
yes. And so she died of what I do believe of suicide a few years ago. And for me, it's like, what's going through these people's mind? What went through her mind? What was she going through? Was there a possibility that someone could have said something and helped her, motivated her, or whatever, that healing that she needed? I mean, with the stuff that you're talking about as far as self-healing, the people that are thinking those thoughts, what could you say that might help them to get them thinking about where to start?
Oh, that's heavy. Um, hmm. You know, there was this guy, maybe you've heard of him. His name is Viktor Frankl, and he was a psychologist who lived during World War II. He was a middle-aged man when it all started, and he was Jewish. So he was taken to a concentration camp, him and his entire family, and he spent nearly all of World War II inside of that concentration camp. His family all died, his wife, his kids. Going from camp to camp, I believe he spent some time in Auschwitz. He watched many friends die. And the one thing that he said after all of this was done is he said what made the difference between somebody who would survive and somebody who didn't is the people who survived had a purpose. Mm-hmm. They had a why. They had a reason to live. Kind of like what Nietzsche said. Was it those who have a why can bear almost any how? And if somebody was at the point where they're questioning whether or not their time here is worth it, I would say find a reason, find something to die for and live for it.
That's a great way of putting it. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean,
find a why.
I mean, the year that she passed, I think there was another girl that wasn't in our class, but there was another girl that committed suicide. And then that same year, someone that I knew from the East Coast died of a heroin overdose. And, all of that all at once was just like, oh my gosh. Like I could never hurt myself. I've said that I wanted to, but to actually do it, I don't think I could ever do it. Because the realization, like you said, I always think about, what about my kids? What is that going to teach them? I think that's in itself is the medicine, the cure for anything, if they mean the world to you. Family, what are they going to think? I really hope that there's someone watching this right now And feel free, if you're watching this, if you have a comment about anything we've talked about, add into the conversation. That's what this podcast is about. We're a community. We're a family. And so I know that we're running short on time here. But I think this is great. I think what you do and the way that you think, you should see some of the posts that Nate puts on Facebook. I mean, it's like dropping. Like, why didn't I think of that? Why don't I look at life like that? Like, I'm there, but I'm not that there. And I give you so much props, man. I mean, I really hope that this continues with you, because like there's a lot of people that I knew in high school that I never would have thought this would come, like good things would come from. Like there's another guy who's a Lutheran pastor that grew up with us in high school. And that's amazing. Blows my mind. There's you, there's we talked about Hensley. We've talked about Dan Hogan. I mean, there's so many people. But yet we had the largest high school class, 600 some kids. And yet I just wish there was more people that would stand up and do good things, because that's what we're here for. We're not here to just sit around and go, okay, well, guess I'll have another glass of sun tea or something. I don't know. But, you know, our purpose is to support each other. That's my point. And what you do does exactly that. What Dan does is exactly that. The mission that Tyler Hensley did by traveling across the country on his bike, that is that. What I call it, I don't know if you've seen my podcast, I call it is being that person. You're being that person every time you post, every time you make an emotional video that you do so much of, because there's one where you're walking down in the middle of anywhere in Flathead, I'm assuming, and then there's one where you almost probably killed yourself walking with Dan up in the mountain, which was quite fun to watch. But no, I mean,
that guy's a beast, man.
I would, when I saw you doing it, I was like, well, it's better him than me. I just interviewed him from the phone. You can just do all the interview and walking with him all you want. But he is amazing. And I just encourage everybody. Do you have social media where people can check your stuff out? I mean, talk about that. Where can they find you?
Yes. So I'm on YouTube. You can just look me up, Nate Prince. It's the name of the channel. And then on Facebook, at Mr. Nate Prince. Somebody already had Nate Prince, so I had to throw a Mr. in there. But yeah, at Mr. Nate Prince. And I do daily live videos where I talk, I share a piece of wisdom from somebody who's a lot smarter than me. And I try to, in the best way that I can, talk about how we can incorporate it into our life, like for that day, for that moment. So just little tidbits.
I think that in every aspect, everybody is unique and has the smarts. So I think totally. It's just how you do it. Like the way you're doing it, that's unique for you. What Dan's doing, that's unique for him. And the way that I'm doing stuff, that's unique for me. You know, you're doing stuff from, you know, a inner aspect. I look at stuff from that, but also more of a Christianity outlook, which coincidentally, the stuff that you say is almost identical as to what scripture or a religious function would have said. And I think it's funny that when people are like, oh, I don't believe in Christianity, it does nothing, it's not true. Well, if that's not the case, then if Nate's saying this and it's worked and that's how it's been, how is the Bible saying the same exact thing, not the truth? Yeah. It's just another way of saying it. It's another way of belief. Yeah. And what you're doing is awesome, man.
Yeah. Oh, you too, man. One thing I want to comment on that I've noticed watching your content that I think is huge is the vulnerability that you're willing to express. You know, that's one of the most difficult things about when you're putting yourself out there. Is it's one thing just to talk about yourself, but to be vulnerable and to show the sides that most people don't want to share. I think that that's what makes people relatable, and that's what, drives people to want to listen. So, yeah, dude, you are appreciated big time.
Well, that's the thing. We're going through such a crazy. Who would have thought, we would see what's going on with our country? Just the embarrassment of people being racist and saying all this stuff. But I've been saying it the last two podcasts I came out with. It doesn't matter what race. It doesn't matter if you're handicapped. It doesn't matter if you have a speech impediment, whatever. All of our lives matter. All of our lives matter. And we need to accept it. It doesn't, I just don't get it. Like, we grew up with so much different type of nationalities within our own high school. We had Mexican, we had, I do believe, a Russian, we had a few people of color, we had twins, we had triplets, we had every sort of thing that you want to throw out there that people are complaining about or making a big deal about. We had it. And I never looked at anybody any different. I looked at everybody the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. That's where we need to be. And I see it with the way that you talk, the way that you do things. That I think you even made a comment about what's going on right now. I mean, it's unheard of. It's unheard of.
Well, and I think that, it's a very confusing time. And I think that, a lot of the people who are out there talking about it, they have a very legitimate purpose, a very legitimate reason to be frustrated, because it has let us down. It's let a lot of people down in a lot of ways, and it needs to be looked at and reconfigured. There's no doubt about that. Like, when you look at our prison prison rate per capita, especially for nonviolent crimes, it's incredible. I mean,
it's outrageous.
It's outrageous. So, like, there's a lot of aspects that are very valid. There's also some aspects about the movement that's happening right now that concerns me. And I mean, I hesitate to even talk about it because it's such a triggering issue, and people are very quick to feel triggered by this. I think that one of the big things that we all need to focus on, which is what you just said, Kent, and that's that, like, we're all one race. We're human. We all have the same colored blood.
Yep.
And I think what's happening with a lot of the other races is they're starting to feel like they're being attacked.
Yep.
And I think if we can focus on working through this together with unity, then good things could happen.
Well, we've just seen so much. Like, women's rights was a year ago. A lot of people were talking about women's right for equal pay, stuff going on with the Olympic female gymnastic team. I mean, there's just so much stuff. And now we're going back to race. It's stuff that's always been around, but it gets slightly fixed to make people slightly satisfied. It does not get fully fixed, and that's what the problem is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that I think that when we look at this on a really deep level, like, there's a lot of people who may kind of laugh at this sort of an idea, but there's a lot of people who know exactly what I'm saying, and that's that what we're seeing right now goes beyond race. It goes beyond politics. What we're seeing right now is on another level. It's like spiritual warfare. I mean,
yeah.
And today what we're seeing is a battle between good and evil, and where it goes, time will tell.
If they played all this stuff that's been on the news and media when we were in high school, we would have thought it was a freaking movie.
Totally.
See the coming out this fall. It's insane.
When you go back and you look at Google Trends for the term Black Lives Matter, you see a really interesting trend. And that's that the last time that it surged was just before the last election. cycle.
Yep.
And then now it's happening just before this election cycle. And so I think that the real frustration, the real anger, the frustration that people are feeling that's justified, it's being used by certain groups in order to justify a certain end. And unfortunately, large masses of people coming together with a severely emotional outcry aren't working from the most logical standpoint. And so they're easily manipulated. It only takes one bad apple to ruin a barrel,
Absolutely.
And yeah, so
one last thing before I go. We're talking about positivity. And I want to talk about my hometown because I'm dang proud of it because of what has happened this last month or two. And I want to talk about cruising the Flathead.
Oh yeah.
I want to tell you, man. From your aspect, you're talking about healing. We're dealing with all this fear. We're dealing with anxiety of this virus because we can't say the word on YouTube. The virus that's causing everybody to go all crazy. Kalispell, Montana didn't have any outbreaks for 50 some weeks this past week until some nimwit from out of state came in apparently. But anyways, positivity. I didn't mean to say that. All right. Anyways, tell us what that meant to you, seeing Flathead Valley come together and for what was it, 5-6 miles backed up on highway? Just to go down Main Street to do a burnout, fly their American flags. I mean, if that ain't America, what is it? I mean, talk about what that meant for you being at home right now.
That was so cool, man. Because just like you're saying, that was at the height of when everybody was social distancing. There was still quite a bit of fear going around. And to see our community come together like that, because Dragging Maine, that was cool when we were in high school, but it died, man.
Yeah, like Third and Main, baby, Third and Main.
Yeah, man. I talked to kids nowadays before all this, they didn't know what Dragging Maine was. So to see that tradition come back, but more importantly, to see such a huge part of our community come together and do it, and show support for each other, and the fact that we're all in this together. Man, I was so proud of where we're at, and I just felt a tremendous sense of community and support, and that life is still good, and that we're gonna come out the other side of this thing in a good place. Because
you don't see that anywhere on any other social media, no other state, no other town. It's Kalispell, Montana. We get a lot of grief, for counting sheep and all that stuff and driving wagons, which people I don't know if they believe that or not, but dude, I'm proud of Kalispell, man. We have some of the best people in the whole country, I think.
Definitely.
And it's proof right there. People are honking their horns. I can't tell you. I went on Facebook the first week that it happened, and it was post after post after post after post of everybody with their phones out their windows, people with their heads out going, screaming. I mean, nice cars, nice trucks. I mean, shoot. And for the city of Kalispell and the police, the sheriffs, all that, to allow the community, and I say that firmly, community, to come together speaks numbers for how they believe in our town. Because a lot of other places, man, you do that in Kansas City, it wouldn't work out, man, because there'd be like a lot more than burnouts and stuff like that. I mean, but geez, man, I saw that, it brought tear to my eye. I'm not joking. It is a powerful statement when a community comes together. And when was the last time, and let me ask you this, when was the last time you remember Kalispell and the Flathead County as a whole coming together to do something like that? The answer, never. That speaks huge for what's going on right now. And it took a tragedy, unfortunately, something that's hopefully we'll never see again. But wow. I had to get your thoughts on it because to me, it was like, holy crap, man. If I was back home, I don't know. I would be afraid to stand on the sidewalk from what I saw, but my God. Wow.
Yep.
Did you take part in it?
Oh yeah, yep. My family loaded up inside of our little CJ7, and we went out and hit the roads and spent 2 hours trying to make it to the other end of Main Street. It was
2
awesome.
hours.
Yeah,
2
that's an
hours.
exaggeration. It was probably an hour and a half, but it was a long
My
time.
God.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
was it worth it?
Totally. It was. Yeah, man. Totally.
If they would have said in high school, hey, you guys, in 2020, there's going to be a huge pandemic going on, and you guys are going to be cruising Maine with everybody in the whole freaking town and valley. And it's going to take you an hour and a half just to get through one end to the other. You would have been like, how is that any different than Main Street at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? But no, it's insane. My parents told me they stayed in the house. They didn't want to deal with the cluster of the traffic, but my gosh.
I don't blame them. I've never seen it like that before in downtown Kalispell.
It's good. Well, hopefully things stay that way and the community stays strong, except for football season when our Flathead Braves kicked the tails of a Glacier. I mean, I found out my daughter, she was supposed to go to Glacier. Just as a side note, people are going to be like, what's Glacier? But anyways, Glacier is the second high school that was built, unfortunately, after we had to deal with all the cluster of being in Flathead High School with 600 plus kids. That's just our class with two other grades, sorry. Anyways, Flathead is the main high school that we went to, the best high school, orange and black forever. Found out that my daughter's going to go to Flathead instead. I was a proud father at that moment.
Yeah, I could tell.
What high school are you kids going to go to? Are you blue and green, or are you red and black?
Oh,
Or
I
orange
don't
and
know.
black?
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens when they get to that age. That's a ways away. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's nice to. My daughter's 14, man. First year going into Flathead. I'm prouder than can be. I mean, she's going to do well there, but man, great talking to you. I could talk to you for hours. My gosh, it's good to talk to a
Definitely.
familiar face, man. We haven't seen each other in person since we talked before coming on here, since graduation in 2004, which is a heck of a long time ago.
Yeah, man.
Seems
Time
like
flies.
yesterday, though.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, man. Yeah, it was good connecting with you too, man.
But anyways, I'm gonna post your link to your YouTube channel on my page. So if any of you are interested in checking out his YouTube channel, go check it out. Also, give him one more time how to find you on your social media.
Oh yeah. Just look me up. Facebook is at Mr. Nate Prince, and then on YouTube would be just Nate Prince.
All right. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Remember to think and be positive. Do what you can today, not what you can't. And I believe in you. Nate believes in you. Don't you think you should too? And I'll see you next time right here on Facebook, YouTube, and all my other social media accounts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video if you know Nate. He's a good guy. And I'll see you next time. God bless.